What happens when the identity you've built for decades no longer fits and you decide to start again anyways? In today's episode, we sit down with Sheri Doss, an education icon in our industry who reinvented herself not once, but twice in a short period of time. Sheri's story challenges everything that we think we know about career paths in the salon industry. In this episode, you'll learn how to reinvent yourself without losing credibility, even when your name is deeply tied to a previous role or brand. You'll discover how to navigate fear, judgment, uncertainty when making, bold career pivot later in your professional life. And you'll gain a perspective on how reinvention can actually bring more freedom, more clarity, and more fulfillment, not less. So if you've ever felt like you needed to do something different but didn't know how to begin, this episode may be exactly the answer that you need. Welcome to the Salon Scoop, the podcast that helps salon owners and salon professionals grow their business, boost their brand, and stay inspired. From salon marketing and social media to leadership and growth, we uncover the strategies and stories that move the industry forward. If you love learning, growing, and are serious about leveling up your salon business and brand, you've just found your new go-to podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Salon Scoop, everyone. I am super excited to be having this conversation today with our guest, Sheri Doss. Sheri was on our podcast, probably one of our first 10 episodes that we did. So if you want to kind of hear the difference from sort of where Sheri was back then to where she is now, I would highly recommend that you go and check out that episode. Sheri, you've always been one of my favorite people in the industry just due to your genuine nature and true sincerity when it comes to wanting to serve and help salon professionals grow. And I find that your perspectives apply not just to people in the salon industry, but kind of mindset that will be helpful for people in all aspects of their life, not just professionally, but personally. And really enjoy the opportunity to have you back on the show. Thanks so much for coming back and having a discussion with me today about some new things that have been happening in your life.
Thank you so much for having me back, Scott. I was really pleased to see your name pop up in my text messages, or WhatsApp, I should say. And I think we got familiar with WhatsApp together when you came down and visited me in Costa Rica. So good to see your face again and to be here in this space with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've definitely had quite a few changes in the last couple of years, and that's really what we want to delve into a lot today. Is, I mean, from leading global education, for Redken and then being part of the L'Oreal group for many, many years, to then stepping away and kind of going into early retirement mode and building a bit of a life in Costa Rica, as you mentioned, and then returning to the professional world as head of education for Bumble and Bumble. Want to really kind of delve into this a little bit with you to share what goes on in significant, life changes that impact obviously both professional and personal nature, and how to navigate that, because ultimately it comes down to change, and people are often scared of change. It causes a lot of stress, anxiety, and when your personal identity or professional identity is tied to something and then we're changing that can have an even deeper effect. And I think that you're going to have some great insights to share. So looking forward to delving into this.
I hope so. I know. No, I certainly, I think, thank you. It feels like you give me a lot of credit, but I do hope that through, obviously some questioning from you and honest answers from me, which I will always give, we can hopefully help whoever's listening to the podcast today to maybe find a little nugget that they can use in any choices or changes that they're experiencing in their life right now.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you can always count on from Sheri is complete honesty, transparency, and just a genuine nature. And that's why I wanted to have you on for this episode. So Sheri, let's sort of delve into that identity that you had for so many people in our industry for so many years. You were Redken Education, right? How did that role kind of shape your identity, your personal identity over all the years that you were a part of that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was with Redken for a very long time, 30 years from the start when you when you include when I was a Redken artist for them all the way through the years you and I worked together, and while you were head of Canada, and so many more years after that. What I feel very blessed by is the opportunity to grow up there. I was very young when I started in the industry, and I was very young when I started at Redken. I was exposed to this life that I didn't know that existed. I thought I was going to go to college and be a high school math and English teacher. And then I was doing hair behind the chair, and I went to a Redken program called the Redken Specialist. And I was just completely blown away that there was this area, this group of people, this brand that brought education to the forefront and did it in a way that wasn't talking at people. And when I was 19, I think I mentioned it on the previous podcast, I wrote my mission statement, which is to learn something new every day and to help others learn something new so that they can live their best life. So you can imagine I'm showing up young, a stylist, creative, knowing that I love education and being in this room filled of with people like minded and being able to, at the time their tagline was earn a better living, live a better life, which, mine was help others live their best life. So I'm like, whoa, seems to be perfect. So I started as an artist with them. And then as I was an artist, I was going into salons teaching. And I learned really quickly that I could help salons and salon owners to really work in a smarter way and make more money. And so I thought, wow, I can help people that, maybe were struggling as salon owners and stylists. And my mom was a struggling salon owner in the past, as many of you know. And so it was really an opportunity to jump in and be able to bring this life experience I had with my mom, this desire to want to help and serve people, and this creativity of Redken. And so I asked if I could become full time, and that sort of was the beginning of this very long journey and career that I had with Redken. I had many mentors along the way that helped me really to uncover I would say these masks that we put on, right? Like as we go through life, oftentimes we are, bobbing and weaving and trying to become what we think somebody else wants us to be, right? And so we put on a mask for them. And, we think, oh, okay, my boss expects this, so I'm going to put on that mask. And my partner expects this, so I'm going to put on that mask. And as I went through my career and my journey there, I had some amazing mentors that helped me learn how to take those masks off and just be authentically me. And then I did a lot of work too. There's some great books that I've read along the way that have helped me also become very much me. So I think, when I think of my career at Redken, I also think of not only how Redken shaped me, but how I shaped Redken. I was able to bring myself authentically to the forefront of any platform that I stood on and just be me. And that's what I asked of others, is for them just to show up and be your authentic self. Let's take the masks off. Let's help each other. Let's be there for each other. And so I really was able to live out my mission that I wrote before I even met Redken, which is to help people to live their very best life. I, of course, changed it later to learn better, earn better, live best. But it was right in line with what I was already, so committed and passionate of doing. So I feel blessed by all the years that I had there and the people that helped me to have a platform to help other people to live their best life, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean that clearly became. I mean, it was part of your identity, as you said, message-wise, and it became your professional identity and embodied, in a brand that you represented. So when you think back to those Redken and L'Oreal days, even in the last 10 years of it, did you ever imagine yourself working with another brand, another company?
Definitely not. Definitely not. And not for any other reason, but I loved my job. I was really happy and I was surrounded by hairstylists. And I had, and at the end of the day, I did work with other brands, towards the end of my career at L'Oreal. I did work on the American brands professional products division, or PPD as they call it. So I did get to, do a lot for Pope Riot, for Purology, for Biolage, and for Matrix. So I do feel like I was able to flex that muscle of working with other brands while simultaneously still being myself and still carrying out my own personal mission, which is to help people through education and through giving them an opportunity to upskill. So, when I left, as you mentioned at the very top of this podcast, when I early retired, I don't know what retirement age is these days, but I suppose it was probably considered early. I actually left to another country. My mother lives in Central America, and I bought property there years and years ago and was developing it. I had created a couple apartments as Airbnbs and knew that eventually, when I did retire, I wanted to have a taco stand. Just to be very honest, as you get older, I think you sort of realize that there's certain experiences with family that you want to have. And she was in a position where I wanted to have those experiences before it became too late. And so I needed to move down there to be close to her. So at the, sort of towards the end of 2023, I, talked to the team over at L'Oreal and explained that I needed to relocate to another country. And, it was sad. Like I cried they were my people. I wasn't leaving because of anything that I was upset with. I was leaving because at the end of the day, we have to look at our priorities, and sometimes our decisions are made for us. And that was a decision, living in another country and still working for the brand wasn't a possibility. So I headed down to Costa Rica and reinvented myself there in a totally different space.
And that's clearly the first reinvention, which I imagine, must have been I would imagine to be very difficult, because you've had all this professional success and professional identity and, known globally, right, amongst salon professionals around the world and all of your impact, and then sort of removing from that and going to a small, call it Central America
beach town.
Yeah, beach town where people don't know you necessarily, and you're there for different reasons. How did doing that and that project you talked about, the taco stand, the taco bar, how did this project kind of shift your perspective on success and fulfillment?
That's a deep question, Scott, and it has so many different answers. I think first and foremost, the idea of helping people, part of that is creating experiences, right? Like there needs to be I do a lot of anytime I'm talking to the team now, I'm like, what do you want people to walk away with? And so when I was building with my partner the taco shop, it wasn't small, right? So we thought about like when somebody walks in, what is the experience that we want them to have? What is it that we want them to walk away with? And so while I would say we have really good ratings. So we had amazing tacos and I worked really hard on those. And sometimes in my trial period, I had epic fails. But I also, did the menu and, it was like everything was to make somebody feel special. And I think ultimately, like, helping people to live their best life is giving them an experience where they feel special. So I knew I didn't want to just sling tacos and margaritas, that they had to feel special. So when they came in, there was, decor, there was hand painting. It was very much an experience of like walking through Coco, the movie, the Pixar movie, which is a Day of the Dead, right? And so the artwork was all bespoke, all of the plates and the glassware came from Guadalajara, Mexico, which is where my partner is from. The tacos were inspired by these modern tacos that we had in Guadalajara, Mexico. And so everything had an experience. The salsa on top was his mother's recipe. The carnitas was his dad's recipe. And so you would then walk by, and we had a tagline, which is Vive el Momento, which means live in the moment. And so everything was about that as well, right? So they'd walk in, there was an ofrenda. On the ofrenda, it said Vive el Momento, and they could write down their wishes, their hopes, and their dreams, and they would put them into the box. And we would do this ceremony and, burn all of their wishes up to the heavens. And that became a place where people came back. So we had a very regular clientele that I get text messages every day. Can we make a reservation for the 30th of January last night? I'm like, sorry, not this year. But we ended up filling that ofrenda with gifts that people would bring us back from their travels, or those that lived remotely and would come back often because they had a place there, they would bring things. And I just feel like, you know myself and my partner would talk to them and be like, well, what are you enjoying about life? So it was really simultaneously about building this experience, about living life. And then part of it too was I hosted some retreats down there for hairdressers. So still staying, sort of connected to the industry that I love so much really filled my soul. I did do some coaching with some hairdressers, and I still was continuing to work with a school out in California, writing their curriculum, training their educators, etc. I think is a very long answer. I'm sorry, I got all excited about my taco place, but I think that one of the things that we as humans need to try to do is to understand who we are and what our purpose is. And part of that purpose is that mission statement, right? And so long as we're living our mission statement, we're living that life, then we will feel fulfilled, whether that is doing hair behind the chair, whether that is owning a salon, whether that is, having a taco shop where I'm trying to ask somebody about their life so that they can learn more about their life so that they can live their best life. If we're living our mission, then we're going to be happy. I think that if I were to say, it was upsetting, then that would be a little bit more of like, okay, that's the ego because I needed to be on stage. But you don't, right? You just need to live your mission. And my mission has always been very clear. I did try to
And you
teach people how to make tacos, and that didn't work.
which is the education portion. But
Yeah, I was trying hard. I'm like, make that salsa. What do you think is different about your salsa and my salsa?
it sounds like the key message is that we can find fulfillment and live through our own mission, which is what brings us the fulfillment. That can manifest itself in many different ways. It doesn't have to be only in one way that we have been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah.
Sort of like cueing in and then recognizing that. When you think back to the moment or that in between time where you had made the decision that you were going to be, leaving the corporate world and going to Costa Rica to kind of embark on this project and be with family, your mom, like you said, was it exciting? Was it terrifying, or both, to kind of like walk away from that corporate life and that embodiment that you had represented for, close to 30 years and something that really had defined you? What was the
Yeah.
feeling there?
I think it's a mixed bag of emotions, to be honest, Scott. I think, obviously it leads me to a second sort of life lesson that I have for somebody because, I have been talking a lot over the last several years about having what I call your taco plan. And that, that's about taking off the masks, right? So you've got this mission statement and you want to be true to yourself. But then you have these masks because just because I have this mission statement doesn't mean everybody's going to be in line with it. But you have to be bold enough and honest enough to live the life that you want and to stand up for things, right? And so part of, it was a joke for a long time because Shane Wolf, who's my big boss over here and was my boss previously at L'Oreal, I'd joke with him and be like, well, I can always go make tacos, go ahead, fire me. I can always go make tacos. And it was a little bit of a joke, but it's also what happened when I had my taco plan, meaning I had purchased the land and I knew that it could in the future be something for me, is it gives you a little bit of, I don't want to say, it gives you some confidence, I think would be the right word, to be able to stand up for the things that you think are right. Because again, there's times where we won't stand up for the things that we think that are right because we're afraid we're going to get fired. We're afraid somebody's not going to like us. We're afraid, blah, blah, blah. And in that place of fear, we can never make things happen. And so for me, it is about sort of having this taco plan because, if tomorrow I was told, okay, done here, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go make tacos. And I figured out how to do it a little bit differently and even better, than before. I would tell people, especially in our industry, right, that we often don't know how to manage money. And I can tell you, I probably still don't know how to manage my money. I know for a fact I don't, right? I'm not spending like a rock star or anything like that, but I could definitely use some help in investing if anybody out there wants to come and help me. But other than that, find something that is going to help you to be able to take that leap whenever you feel like you want to or you need to. Like in my situation, I needed to and made that decision because my mom was down in Central America. And so, because it also happened really fast. So I moved at the end of 2023, and I was still doing events till the middle of 2024. And we were opening the restaurant in 2024, and we hadn't finished construction. So it was highly overwhelming because, I was sort of ramping down and getting ready to hand things off at my L'Oreal job, and simultaneously trying to gear up for a launch of November 1st, which is Day of the Dead, because it was very important for us to do that. So I would say definitely exciting and definitely stressful, but that's just because I like to have a lot of things going on at the same time. I would say this is going to sound so silly, but the most interesting switch was, this look going to something that someone once called me a kitchen pirate because, it's like no makeup, the hair's got to be back so it doesn't get in the food, and, and got to put a little handkerchief or something on there. Yeah. And no makeup. So I was a kitchen pirate. So the look was definitely different. In fact, somebody from one of the symposiums happened to come by. I don't know how she found it and how she knew I was there, but I got called out of the kitchen. She goes, "Oh, I thought you were taller and you were more sparkly." And I'm like, yeah, it's a different look. But I think,
happens. That happens.
yeah.
I can relate. I had to go through that experience myself. I'd had a reinvention. I'm not going to go into my story here at all deeply, but when I left the corporate world, L'Oreal, one of the first things that I got into was super, super small business. Many people might know I am still a partner today in Green Circle salons, and was part of the startup phase. The greater Montreal area, province of Quebec. And on certain days, I had to fill in and drive the truck around and go and pick up the essentially recycled garbage, the foil and the color, like from salons. And I would go into some of the top salons that had known me as like being up on stage and like the suit and presenting, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like now it almost feels like you're the garbage man coming in and picking up our salon garbage." And for them, and even I have to say, for me, you have to be prepared to swallow a lot of sort of ego and say, yeah, I can understand that people might look at it, in one perspective and see certain things. I have to make sure that, I know that I'm fulfilling something that's deeply, meaningful to me, and that I know that I'm making an important difference here, and I'm prepared to do whatever I need to do, right, to make that happen. And when you're in the small business, startup mode, as you've been explaining, that's often what happens. So anyhow, let's delve into the second reinvention, because it's sort of like industry to industry. I mean, I had the pleasure and opportunity to come and visit you in Costa Rica prior to the opening, but while all the development was sort of happening, and I saw you, and your partner in your element. Felt like, all right, yeah, I get it. I can see you, lit up by this. So I was personally very shocked when I heard that you were returning to the corporate world to join Bumble and Bumble. So I want to just I'm sure a lot of people in the industry, were. So I want to just clarify for people, how did that opportunity come about? What went through your mind to make what I would assume would be a big decision to kind of come back to the corporate world? Many people in that situation would likely have doubts or fears about much smaller changes in their life, but this seems pretty big since you had already established your reputation in one brand, and then you had left to kind of go to Costa Rica and in the early retirement, and then come back to represent education with a different brand. So how did it come about, and what was going through your mind to make that decision?
Yeah, great question, Scott. So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Shane Wolf, who was head of L'Oreal PPD, the global side of it, the global marketing, we call DMI, he had transitioned out of L'Oreal and took a little sabbatical himself. And then when he came back to oversee the hair care division at Estee Lauder. And that makes, that's comprised of Aveda and Bumble and Bumble. And so he had some ideas and some plans, as he does, on how to serve the pro in a more profound way. Bumble and Bumble, as you know, started out as a hair salon in 1977 here in New York City at Hairdressers Row. And because the products weren't necessarily performing the way that the team wanted them to perform backstage and on set, the owner, the founder started making products and working with companies to make products that fit the needs of the artists that were using the products versus what traditionally in brands, as we know, can be a marketing calendar, right? That you have to annualize. And so, as they went on and started to distribute their products, this is very much a direct model, and they're called network salons. So those salons have been we've been hugging those salons and providing education and product directly to them for years. And along the way, some decisions were made that the focus just, I don't think, was necessarily on the pro, to be very transparent. And so Shane is a hairstylist. And so when he, of course, is in a situation where there's a professional hair brand, he will always want to serve the pro. And so he asked if I'd come back and help on this mission of serving the pro, because he knows that my passion for serving the pro is there. And it wasn't even a question. I spoke to a couple people, talked about it, started back in April of last year, commuting from Costa Rica to New York City here in meatpacking at the House of Bumble. And the opportunity to serve professionals will always be my first and foremost mission in life, my go-to. It's a community that I believe in. I believe that the community has so many opportunities in this industry that they don't always know about. I believe that the creativity for them is here, and sometimes they're not finding out about that. I believe that we being hairdressers, can transform the lives of those that sit in our chair, and that we can uplift the world. I know that sounds like very big, right? But I feel like we have an opportunity when somebody's sitting there to make them feel better, not only because of how they look, but to talk to them in a way that helps them discover more about themselves, right? As clients, and can have a better life when they go back. They're happy, they talk to their friends. It's like that kind of vibration, that energy. If we can keep that up, I feel like we have nothing but positive to come out of this industry. I love it so much. So that made it, like a no-brainer. And then the more I started to dive into the history, which I knew it had a rich history, but I didn't know all of the fine details. Bumble and Bumble was made for, the misfits, the dreamers, the creators, those that didn't want to do, sort of like this paint by numbers cutting, the inventors of razor craft and bringing the razor, which was so traditionally in barbershops, to mainstream. And the idea of being able to take all of that and help those who are, going through beauty school now and recently really own what the craft of hairdressing is made me very excited. There's some states where if you break it down, they have less than 200 hours spent on caping for health and safety, shampooing, cutting, and blow drying. All of that in 200 hours. They're not all required to bring a human in to show that they can do hands-on for their state board exam anymore. And then, sometimes they don't want to assist, and I can understand that perspective. I didn't want to assist much either when I got out, but they go into a suite and they're finding it hard to be able to make a living, and they don't love the industry, and I can understand why, yet it's such a beautiful industry. And so if there's a way that I can work with a brand that can bring that craft, hairdressing and hair cutting back, along with the business tools, and help people to love this industry as much as I do, then sign me up all day long.
And sign up you have.
Yeah.
Clearly. So let's talk about kind of the process of reinventing yourself and your image and what you had to kind of go through as part of that transition. I think a lot of people in our industry will be able to learn from this, regardless if they're a salon owner or a stylist or salon professional working in a different capacity in the industry, because ultimately this is about managing change. That's how I see it. And I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, did you worry about, how the industry was going to perceive your move? Because everyone knew you as, a hardcore, let's say, Redkenite, and now coming back and representing a different brand. And how did you navigate maybe redefining your professional identity after so many years with a different brand?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I didn't worry about how they would perceive me because people are going to have their perceptions, right? And that's their story to have. It's not my story to own. So, if somebody has a struggle because I'm the Redken girl in their mind and they can't see me, why would I go over to another brand? Because as much as I loved being at Redken and I love being at Bumble and Bumble, at the heart of everything is the hairdresser for me. So that's my focus, right? And I would never sign up for a brand that doesn't have that same focus. So I was lucky enough to do that for the first career that I had in the industry. And I'm lucky enough to be able to be partnered at a brand that is so profoundly, deeply, passionately, fearlessly dedicated to the salon professional now. And so I didn't worry about how other perceived me because I just, like I said, that's their story to have.
Yep. Other people's opinions are none of your business.
That's exactly right. They're always going to have them. I mean, every day, even no matter, it's like you can't please all of the people. And I know that I'm not going to please all of the people, and that's okay. I just have to please, I have to do it for my own integrity and my own mission, right? Where I wanted to be very clear is not doing a copy paste of what was done over at Redken. Now, the thing is that we're totally two different brands, right? We don't have hair color at Bumble and Bumble. We are focusing on styling while we both identify with that New York City and vibe. They are different enough for me to feel like I'm not trying to tread on any toes or vice versa. I feel like I wanted to be very clear as I was building the education curriculum here that it wasn't just like, oh, well, this worked at Redken, so this is what we're going to do here. And, there are some overriding principles that no matter whether you are another independent brand, whether you're Vidal Sassoon, whether you're Milady, whether you're Pivot Point, there are some overriding, principles as it relates to just the way things happen. The head is the head is the head. It's kind of round depending on who you are. You can only divide it up so many ways. But and so those will look the same no matter what brand you're going for through the industry, but it's not a copy paste. The way that things are done here are different and with its own style. So I mostly wanted to make sure that I didn't just pick up and be like, oh yeah, well, we're going to do it just like my previous brands did it. I didn't think that would be fair to them, and it's not fair to the group that's here. So I spent, I've spent a lot of months just meeting with people and asking them, okay, so what worked really well here? What was so successful? Because, there was a time where we were named the Harvard of hair here, and because of the education. And so it's like, what made it that? And digging out all of those archives and working with, we do still have flagship salons here in New York City. So working with the flagship stylists and network stylists that have been part of the brand for years. I mean, decades long, and taking everything that they have learned and passed on through the fierce apprenticeship program that we have here at Bumble and saying, okay, how do we take that and scale that to more people? As of February 2nd, we are on shelf at Salon Centric. So we need to make sure that our education is accessible for anyone, no matter where they're at in their career.
Well, you kind of touched on something that makes me think, as we talked about the perception of people who knew you and your old brand, but what their opinions are their opinions. There's also the people that were part of Bumble before you got there that knew you as, an ex, let's say, Redken person, and they
Yeah.
might have their own reservations about, okay, like who this person's coming in, and like how are they gonna, change things? Are they gonna? Is she gonna just try to make us all like to do the same stuff that they did over there at Redken? So how do you, or how did you, or how do you earn trust? With a new brand, a new team, a new audience, because I think that's again a hesitation that a lot of people would face with moving into any kind of new position that they might deal with.
Yeah, very good. There's a unique way of management that I learned eons ago, not even from our industry. And that is in the, when you first come in, you find out what's wanted and you find out what's needed and you serve. And so I spent a lot of time finding out what's wanted and what's needed and then just serving that. Oh, you need this? You don't have that? I'm going to make sure that you get that. What do you need here? And then you're along the way, you're collecting data and you're proving yourself, I suppose, to people. You're proving that you are your word. Now, if I was somebody who was just like, oh, screw it, I knew what to do over here, so I'm just going to do the same thing over here, then I suppose that, well, that wouldn't be me. But there's knowing that you can come in and say, okay, I'm going to find out what's wanted or needed. I'm going to serve. And then as things start to get implemented, you see what's working, you strengthen it. You see what's not working, you remove it. And you keep adding to it. And I also just I've assembled a team that are part of like our key opinion leaders, I suppose. They're part of the House of Bumble collective that we recently launched, I think 2 days ago. And along with the director of pro education development and artistry, it's Matt King. And we do a lot of real time ideation. So, someone will come in who's maybe taught haircutting forever here, as that's part of this key opinion leadership team, and we go, okay, we're gonna watch this and we're gonna break it down as it's going along, and we're gonna together figure out, okay, what do you call that? How should we talk about that? What should the word be? What's going to be our language of teaching, our points of reference? And we're building it together. I tell them we're building the plane while we're flying it. We are, and we're a group that's open to that. And I'm somebody that's open to that. We have somebody who's very, well renowned in the education world with multiple different brands, who said at a training we had a couple weeks ago that they've never worked at a brand where leadership is interested in developing it with the team that's going to be teaching it in such a profound way. And so, for me, well, I thought that was interesting just based on, my experience in the world. But, that's what's important, is building it together. So it's more just like, let's just figure it out. There's something that we're going to launch that is Tom Gallagher. I call him, the Professor Bumble, because he's just, wow, he is so knowledgeable. And he did this thing that I was like, I think my mind is melting right now. Can we take 2 steps back? And so, how do we take what he's doing so intuitively and break that down in a way? And we do that together. So I think there's a couple things, if we're just like trying to go, okay, this is my story, right? And my story has its own nuances. But for anybody out there that's looking to make a change, first, just let's acknowledge that change is hard. If it's a change that we are deciding to make, it's still hard, no matter how much we're wanting to or making the decision to leave a situation. But know that it's just a moment in time, right? And it's hard. Try to figure out what's making it hard. Is there something that we're attached to that is real that we need to keep going? Is it a relationship with somebody that we're currently, involved with in a work situation? That's okay. You can still have friends when you go to the other side, if you will. If it's about, your identity, then I'd just say try to take off that mask. I did get rid of most of my Redken clothes. I had to get new ones. So I'm like, I'll never wear these down here in Costa Rica. I mean, I closed all my bank accounts. I never thought I was coming back. And so then, I sort of had to go like, okay, let's go shopping, and I don't like shopping. So it's an online thing. But, so one is accept that change is going to happen and that it's sometimes we have to change because we're listening to ourselves and what we need to do, whether that's personally or professionally. Try to remember that a change isn't just a transition. And there's a book called Life is in the Transitions, which I would recommend to everybody because it's really great. I would always have a backup plan, a taco plan, because that's going to help you just be confident in anything that you're doing and know that you got sort of like this plan B or whatever to fall back on. And always go with your mission and try not to worry what anyone else has to say. Somebody's going to always have something to say about how you're living your life, even those that are close to you. And the more you listen to that, the further away from being yourself you are.
Love that. Those are some really great insights, both a mindset that you need to have when making a change. You referenced something about, change is difficult. Let's acknowledge that. And I would say when you're the one deciding the change, I feel it's even harder, the struggle that you kind of go through mentally, like, should I change? Should I not? When should I do it? As opposed to if something outside of your control happens, let's say you get, fired or something, or let go from your job, then it's like, okay, well, I have no choice. I have to sort of fall in. Whereas people who are trying to maybe make the decision on their own have that decision not necessarily
made for them,
but
right?
Yeah, it's harder if you have to kind of make that decision yourself. Most people can't push themselves to do that. I both made decisions to leave a comfortable, corporate environment, sort of job, and that's a difficult decision to make. But once you have a vision for yourself and you kind of follow that and see that you can be fulfilled in many other ways, then it becomes actually exciting sometimes to say, hey, I want to continue to be fulfilled, continue to deliver my mission, but to do it in new ways that are going to maybe touch, more people or different people. So Sheri, what surprised you most about yourself during this transition? Let's say the transition both into the early retirement in Costa Rica and then back into the corporate world of Bumble. Is there anything that surprised you most about yourself?
I don't think I'd have to ponder that a little bit more if anything surprised me. I think that what I was grateful for was my ability to be able to embrace it and just be like, okay, this is where it's vive el momento, right? This is where I'm at right now. And this is what this means. And I'm just going to go all in with all of me in this moment. And, it doesn't mean you don't plan for the future. It doesn't mean you don't have the backup taco plan. It just means that you're going to be present, give yourself to everything. And so I was really grateful for that. I was also grateful that I've found a partner that is in it with me, to be very honest. I mean, somebody that when I met them lived in California, they moved over to New York for me. Then I'm like, within a year, I was like, hey, we're moving to Central America. And then like a year later, I'm like, hey, we're moving back to New York. He did say when I asked him what he wants for this year, he's like, stability. I'm like, so I
he deserved it.
He deserves it. He's an amazing human. And so I think having that support system as well, no matter who it is, whether it's a really great friend or whatever, to, again, not necessarily tell you what to do, because your heart should tell you what to do. You're not other people. You have to be able to make decisions that, again, as you're listening to yourself. And while I wasn't forced to move down there from a professional perspective, I knew that if I didn't and things, didn't go well for the health of my mom, I would never forgive myself. And I'd be a totally different human, to be honest. I would, I'm not going to lie. I walked away from everything. Like, I did not walk away with a severance or anything like that. I walked away because it was my decision to leave. And that's probably, I guess, as I'm speaking that out loud, that's probably was the hardest thing, because you're like, oh, I hope I sell a lot of tacos. And we did. So that's the good news. But I think had I not done that and something were to have happened, then I would never I would be a totally different person. I would never be able to forgive myself. And I don't know what that would have done for me. So we have to, you have to listen to what's the right thing for you and not what's the right thing for anyone else either.
Makes sense. Sheri, I've got two final questions for you.
Okay.
We've talked about the last two reinventions. Looking forward, what's what's maybe the next reinvention of Sheri Doss that we should all be looking forward to?
I love this because I have no idea. No, I mean, like, I didn't plan any of those, right? Like, I mean, I knew I always was going to go to Costa Rica. I just thought that it was going to be like when I was 65, right? I'll be 55 this year. So I didn't think that it was going to be that soon. And for all the reasons I've said throughout this podcast, that was it. So, okay, so I'm here now. I'm canceling my bank accounts. I'm getting rid of all of my black and my sparkly. I'm living on the front of the beach, slinging margaritas and tacos. So I don't need it. Flip flops, right? Is all I need. And then came back, and I would have never have guessed that I would be back. And I don't think that I can guess what's next, but I do have a taco plan. So if it all, goes funny and I don't want to be here anymore, then I can be in Costa Rica making tacos. Everybody come see me. I'm really good at it.
True story. Well, that's it's a great message to have a taco plan, because we never know what may happen. So it's nice to have that. That might be your answer to the final question, but you've provided so many insights here already, but I want to try to maybe summarize. If someone out there is listening to this episode and they know for them it's time for a change, but they're just afraid to take the leap, what might be your one piece of advice to them to help them?
Yeah, I would make sure that, so it's time for the change. I would do a gut check of, is the thing that I'm changing to in line with my mission? And the mission statement's interesting. It should be based on your values. But people think you've got to define your values, right? So an example is, I've had people where they're like, you don't value family at all because you're not always home. And I'm like, yes, but I provide for my family. So I value family. And in order for me to provide for them in the way that I need to provide for them, I actually have to work. Like, I'm not independently wealthy over here. So I think that you have to, really drill down to what your values are, create your mission statement. I would say do that before you do anything else, anywhere, anytime. Do it tonight, do it this weekend, because that helps be sort of that North Star of every decision that you need to make. If you've done all that and you feel like without a doubt it's time, then there's nothing to wait for, honestly. You just have to do it. And you have to know that there's going to be a mix of emotions. You're going to be like, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? You just have to do it. I don't know. I want to be more profound and have all these amazing, lessons for you, Scott. But I'm like, it's just, you've got to have faith in yourself, I suppose, is probably the biggest point, is that, I was taught by a very strong mom that I can be, do, or have anything that I want. And so I'm like, yeah, cool. I'll go try that for a while, Wait, now I'm going to do this. That's great. So I think you've got to, people have to find themselves. And there's another great book called Dare to Be Yourself by Alan Cohen. And it's written chapter by chapter. There's questions at the end. And I love it as a way to just dive deep and find that confidence. So you have to believe in yourself and you have to trust in yourself, and then just do it. And if you want, you can call me. I'll talk to you about it.
Absolutely. Anyone. We're all here to support. There's a famous quote that I always love that says, on the other side of fear is freedom. It responds to exactly what you've been saying. Like, you just have to do it. We're scared. We're scared to make that decision. We're scared to make that change. We're scared to go because of the unknown. But once you actually get there, like so often we realize that, wow, like it's just so much better than I ever had imagined. And I wish I had done it sooner. And once you get there, you realize it. So you just have to push yourself or find somebody and maybe a support that will help push you if you don't have the full belief in yourself yet.
Right.
But it's out there. So find that support network that can really, you can lean on at the same time. And Sheri, thank you so much for coming back on the show with us here and sharing your journeys over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of change, and I thought that would bring a lot of value to our listeners. And I'm really glad that you were able to articulate everything that was kind of going through your mind. And I hope that I'm sure that everybody picked up lessons that will apply to them and their personal situation. So again, Sheri, thank you so much for your willingness to just continue to give and serve the industry. And I know that you always help so many people, and I'm honored to have you on our show to be able to hopefully spread the message to as many people as possible.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm just thinking, I'll have to come back because I appreciate you saying that I hopefully said some words that'll resonate with people, but it causes me to want to pause and just reflect on, what are those little nuggets that are, reflections that I can share with others. So I'll work on that for you.
Lovely. Well, when the next reinvention happens, we'll bring you back so we can see what you're up to next. Thanks again. Sheri's story is, I think, such a powerful reminder that your career doesn't have to follow a straight line to be meaningful and to be fulfilling. Reinvention doesn't have to be about starting over. It's just about evolving with maybe some new intentions. Whether you're a stylist, changing salons, or an owner stepping away from a business that you built, or a salon professional considering a completely new chapter in your life, I think Sheri has proven to all of us that it's possible to honor your past while fully stepping into what's next and embracing that. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who might be standing at their own crossroads that could use that little boost of confidence that Sheri has shared in this episode, because ultimately growth doesn't stop when you reach the top of the mountain. Sometimes that's exactly where reinvention begins. Thank you so much for listening to the Salon Scoop podcast. This show is produced by Salon S.O.S, a digital marketing agency by industry professionals for industry professionals. If you want simple and affordable solutions for any of your salon marketing needs, such as websites, client loyalty, Google search rankings, social media, or more, come visit us at salonsos.ca or on Instagram at salon.s.o.s. If you want to hear more episodes like this and help us continue to bring the industry great content, it would mean so much to us if you would support us in one of the following ways. Either share this episode with one other industry professional, and rate the show on Spotify or write us a quick review on Apple Music. We want to hear your feedback. If you have follow-up questions or ideas for future episodes, please reach out. DM us on Instagram at salonus.s.o.s or hit us up on our website again at salonsos.ca. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go get your hustle on, keep smiling, and we'll catch you on our next episode.